Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me again on Beyond MD. This is episode number 85. My name is Yatin Chara and I am your host. Today I am thrilled to let you know that Beyond MD will be available on medicinepods.com alongside other wonderful podcasts hosted by our physician community. I'm really excited today to welcome back my colleague and friend, Dr. Michael Fralick. When Mike was first on the podcast, he talked about his experiences locuming. And if you're interested in locuming, I encourage you to go back and listen to his first interview. Today, we talk about so many things because Mike has been up to a lot. In 2024, he released his first book and he launched his first course. So today's conversation is really about finding creativity in medicine, thinking outside the box, using your knowledge and skills to have an impact on people around you, and how to use all of this to find more purpose and find more meaning. I really hope that you do enjoy today's conversation. A quick intro on Mike. He's a board-certified internist in Canada and the US, an associate professor at the University of Toronto. He completed a master's at Harvard in epidemiology and a PhD at U of T at the intersection of epidemiology and machine learning. His research lab's interests span from randomized trials to the creation and deployment of AI models to improve patient care. He was a founding board member at the New England Journal of Medicine Evidence and currently lives in East York with his wife Brittany and daughter Haley. With that, please enjoy my interview with Dr. Michael Fralick. Mike, I have to say that last night I was on call. I had a really busy shift. This is my first time ever doing an interview post-call. And I have to say, Mike, that every time I talk to you, you have a way of just amping me up. When I hear about all the stuff that you are up to, I get really, really inspired and motivated. So I need a pick me up today. So I'm really happy to be talking to you and hearing all the amazing things that you are up to. So Mike, why don't we just jump into your book? You wrote a book called One Pagers. It's amazing how you're able to do all these things, but tell us a bit about this book and what inspired you to do it.
Yeah, so the book One Pagers for the Wards was a sort of passion project over many years, and I think I can remember pretty clearly a couple occasions when I was a first-year resident at St. Mike's, two staff in particular, Ophir Murad, as well as Rena Patani. Both of them, when I was in R1, would have these incredible one-page summaries. And I would just walk away and be like, oh man, this is so helpful, because I felt as an R1 and definitely as a medical student, just the amount of information out there on any topic is overwhelming. So getting it down to one page, concise, that was a real appeal to me. And towards the end of my R1 year, Ophir said, well, you should find some topics that you aren't as comfortable on and create one pagers of your own. That will really help you to learn a topic. And by the end of my R1 year, there was many, many topics that I didn't feel comfortable with. But I remember putting together my first one pager. It was on, I think, maybe tuberculosis or something like that. And I realized each time I then gave it to a trainee, they sort of really appreciated it. So it was just this positive reinforcement of energy back and forth. And then, it took 4 some odd years, truth be told, but I would just sort of slowly chip away. And I'm just opening up in front of me, and I think we have 50 some odd one pagers here, ranging from general topics, approach to a sick patient, to more specific topics, like stroke localization. So really the spirit of the book was inspired by those two staff to really try to get down complex information to one single page, and lots of help from trainees over the years, giving feedback and helping for me to improve it.
That's amazing. Mike, believe it or not, myself as a radiologist, I took a look at your book too. Thank you for sending me a copy. The approach to a sick patient, the joke is that in a hospital, the worst place to have a code blue is the radiology department. But I don't want that to always be the case. So I opened it up and I took a look at how you had summarized things. I have to say, it was very practical. And if coming from a radiologist, hopefully that is of value to you. But I want to understand, I want to understand, how did you put this together? It sounds like this was something you were compiling bits and pieces of information over time, consolidating it, maybe testing it with people. Can you just talk to us a bit about your process? Because I think it could be much easier said than done to say, hey, I want to write a book, but then it's like, how? So maybe talk to us a bit about how you compiled the information over time.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of it was really just iterative. And I can think back to sort of, my first years as a staff physician, thinking about topics that, oh man, every time I need to look this up, I'm going to carve out some time and put this into a one-page summary. So like stroke localization, every time I need to remind myself of it. So it was pretty organic, and it's 50 pages. So I don't know, maybe it was like a page or two every month, and slowly it does sort of build and it comes together. But I think a lot of the inspiration also would come from trainees, asking me questions and me being like, yeah, there isn't a great resource for that. Okay, like maybe that will be the next kind of one pager we put together. And then, I'm very lucky because I run a large research team, and some of my team members helped when it came down to editing it, creating images for it. So it was, a bigger cast than just myself. And then although I wrote every single one of those one pagers, for the more subspecialty ones, there was always a subspecialist that kind of reviewed it for sanity check, and also just to make sure that I wasn't kind of missing the mark. So I'm very lucky to have many different subspecialists that, kind of volunteered their time to give feedback and help to improve it. The other thing I will mention, part of it is kind of self-serving. I was never the one in med school that was like top of the class, or even in undergrad, for that matter. So having the same one pager that I look at all the time, it really helps to solidify it for myself. So like I found that I could memorize this by the end of it because I had gone through it so many times again and again and again. So there was a definite direct benefit to me for doing this as well.
I was talking to one of our mutual friends at my hospital, North York General, so Sagar Rohila. So Sagar, if you're listening to this, I hope you are, but I think you're doing a great job, and he's a great guy. But he told me something. He said, every time he talks to you, you are up to so many different things. You are really flexing your creativity muscle. And so my question for you, Mike, is I know you do a lot. You're up to many things. How do you find that balance between doing so many things, yet channeling your energy and focus towards the things that are going to move the needle the most? How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I think I'm still trying to find that balance, to be honest. And I do think I was sort of like, part of my DNA is just to come to things with enthusiasm and let's get it done kind of attitude, for sure. I honestly think, though, like, I need to work on doing less, probably. So a lot of what I want to do going forward is like, how do I work on less things and spend more time on fewer projects? I know coming into this, you wanted me to think some more on, how do you balance the sort of competing demands? And again, part of it is having a large research team. So I have about a dozen employees, a project manager that has a hand in almost everything I do. And like, I spend a lot of time trying to hire people that I think are going to be outstanding. And then when they join the team, I give them a lot of autonomy and let them run with things with guidance. So I think for any of the projects, maybe that I've mentioned to Sagar or I've mentioned to you, I've had a really incredible like supporting cast to get those things done. And I am very good at keeping track of everything that's on my to-do list and where's the status of each of them. What's the bottleneck? Is it me? So that I can at least have a line of sight of the various projects that I have going at any given time.
I have also struggled, Mike, with trying to do too many things at once. So let me ask you, how many projects can one realistically have on the go and do well? Like, is there a sweet spot for you in terms of number?
Yeah, like I guess nowadays and over the past sort of 18 months, I've tried to really focus on starting less things and just like bringing the ones that are done to completion. So what I'm trying to do sort of going forward in the new year is maybe have 2 or 3 like research projects where I am the sort of first author and really doing a ton of heavy lifting, and 3 or 4 as a senior author where I have a trainee, a grad student that is hopefully the driving force. and I'm just there to pump their tires and keep them going in the right direction and not slow them down. So that sort of like 3 and 3 is what I hope to achieve. And then there's lots of side projects, and the side projects for me are harder to say no to. The book of one-pagers, we have a trial files newsletter, other things like that. But I think I would be remiss also to not say explicitly, I'm a clinician scientist. So 80% of my time is protected to do research. Like I'm not a community internist that's doing 20 or 30 weeks of service a year. I'm much closer to 10 weeks. And that gives me a lot of free time and flexibility to, sink my teeth and my time into projects that like really excite me, or that I think might have the potential to, improve care or maybe improve how people practice medicine.
Mike, give us the exact title of your book before we move on, just so people can search it up and find it.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jan. So it's one-pagers for the wards, and it's available on Amazon. Proceeds are going to support Epilepsy Toronto, and yeah, that's where you can find the book and read more about it.
Mike, I can edit this next part out. I definitely don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there was like a lot of inspiration for you to write this book. You said that part of the proceeds are going towards care for epilepsy. Is that something you want to talk about? I can edit it out. I don't want to put you on the spot, but when you told me the motivation, I was very moved by it, and I think other people may want to hear.
Yeah. So why Epilepsy Toronto? So my younger brother, James, I'm the middle of 3 sons. My older brother, John, he's an internist in Calgary. And my younger brother, James, so he was born with cortical dysplasia. I know most of the listeners are physicians, but, cortical dysplasia, you can kind of think about it as a non-malignant brain tumor of sorts. And as a result of that, within a few weeks of being born, I think my mom knew that there was something different about James, and this was her, her 3rd child. So, she sort of knew the ropes, and she describes the first time seeing him, what she describes as like a sort of breakdancing type of move, which he would then do repeatedly, and unfortunately, it turned out to be seizures. So he required multiple brain surgeries for his epilepsy, and the most recent surgery, fortunately, cured him of his seizures, but left him paralyzed. So he knew during the surgery, and Dr. Valiente, who's like a savior in our household, he was his surgeon, and Dr. Valiente told Jamie the risks ahead of time, and it was awake brain surgery. And he said, I just want you to know, if we're going to proceed with this, you won't be able to move your right arm. And Jamie knew that. That was a decision he made. So they removed the cortical dysplasia. He was initially permanently paralyzed in his right arm, and then unfortunately had an intracranial hemorrhage post-op. So a few days after surgery, I can see it. I can never unsee it. Being at the bedside with him at Toronto Western, I think I was a resident, and he started to go white in the face and then seized. And they rushed him to the CT scanner, and he's found to have an intracranial hemorrhage, and unfortunately that affected his leg as well. So Epilepsy Toronto has been just an incredible organization, and that's why the proceeds are going towards Epilepsy Toronto.
Mike, that is really powerful. I mean, when you told me about this, I was very moved by it, and thank you for sharing this. I mean, It's quite the story, quite the journey that you guys have all been through as a family, and wishing Jamie like the best going forward.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Jan. And I think it comes, I know you have, 2 sons. And as we talked about before we kicked off, my daughter's now 14 months. Like, being a parent is really hard. And just to imagine sort of like being a parent and your child has this debilitating illness. Yeah. I just have a newfound appreciation and respect for, of course, my parents, but the many other parents that have it even harder. And I think another, truth be told, maybe it's a middle son approach to life, but I also think part of the reason why I like to do a lot of projects and get stuff done is because I feel really lucky. Like I was born able-bodied and and relatively intelligent, and able to do so much more than my brother, right? Just because of circumstance and chance. So I definitely think that's another reason why I like to, no, we're going to do something, we're going to get it done, and let's go. So I'm certain, growing up and having a younger brother with, with a disabling illness has affected me in many ways. And maybe my attitude towards work is just one.
Mike, that is a very simple yet powerful perspective that you have based on the experience that you've lived with your younger brother. That's beautifully said. I have nothing to add there, but I hope that everybody listening will reflect on that for a little bit and really savor the opportunities that we have from day to day. There's a lot of opportunity to do things, but Mike, thank you for sharing that. Now, Mike, you do so much. Can you maybe shed light on some of your productivity and time management hacks that help you to get things done?
Yeah, and I'll be the first to admit none of these are totally original. They've sort of been scraped from books I've read. So Atomic Habits, which you and I have mentioned before. And then I think the last time I saw you, Yatin, you mentioned Feel Good Productivity. So I'm very impressionable, but I got that book and man, like that's
awesome,
incredible.
awesome. Yeah.
It's really good. So, some of the strategies that I do, I block off mornings for writing, editing, work that requires like kind of deep thought and a lot of my attention. And that's because for me, I feel like my mornings, I'm sort of most focused and alert and able to sort of do creative work. And then I generally block off afternoons for meetings, and I'll take them on a phone call. And I usually do that while I'm out for a walk because I enjoy exercising. And in general, I don't love meetings. So I try to pair things I don't enjoy so much with tasks I do enjoy.
Yeah.
And similarly, hopefully not too many of my team members are listening to this because I still love meeting with them, but they know, Yatin, that afternoons are the only time they're probably going to get me. And I will probably have my video off and I might be on my bike downstairs, my stationary bike, just sort of getting exercise in. I find that like exercise for me is super energizing. And if I go even a few days without exercise, I just find I'm dragging things a bit. So that idea of habit stacking or pairing activities, that's from Atomic Habits. And then like I'm super strict about not working after 5 p.m., not working on weekends, unless, of course, I'm on call. Part of that came from past mistakes. I can think of some prior relationships, Yatin, that I was in where, I don't know, I was like on vacation and checking email, and my girlfriend at the time being like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you checking email?" and I thought like, no, like this is what we do kind of thing. And part of that was because the people around me were doing that. So that one took me a long time to realize. And I was a slow learner on that one. And I tell my trainees, my grad students, listen, the next 2 weeks are holidays. Like, I'm not checking my email. I don't expect you to either. So I think it's important.
I love it.
I think it's important that we set the kind of tone. When I was a grad student in the U.S., Yatin, I remember I was out at the bar one night, come home, and the next morning I'm just sort of scrolling, and I check my email, and I had a reply from one of my supervisors at like 2 a.m. And I was like, that doesn't feel like what I want to do when I'm a supervisor. But also, even though I was like 30, I wasn't like super young, that made an impression on me. And it made me think, Jesus, are these the expectations? Is this the culture? Like, is this the way things are set up? Yeah. So anyway, so it was reading Feel Good Productivity. He had this great chapter, and he was talking about LeBron James and how LeBron James is like the slowest player of like almost any NBA player, even though he runs really quickly when he needs to. Most of the time he's going slowly. And like Messi is reported of like a similar approach. And I think the point the author was getting at was, listen, like you need to pace yourself. LeBron James isn't sprinting all the time. Messi isn't sprinting all the time. And I thought, oh man, that's a powerful That's a pretty powerful analogy. So yeah, like that's why 5 p.m. Nope, work's done. Weekends, nope. You're just you're not gonna see it from me. And then as mentioned, Yatin, like I have a Google Doc or like a Google Excel doc, I guess, and I keep track of each of the projects I'm working on and each month, what have I gotten done? And I try to update it once a week. It's also good for shred credits. I was listening to a recent podcast of yours, and it sounds like you're going to talk about shred credit soon, but maybe
yes, I have to do that.
Yeah. Oh, you certainly should, for sure, because that also, it makes a big financial difference, I would say. So it serves a dual purpose, but for me, it's kind of, if I can keep track and see things, I'm much better at knowing, oh shoot, I'm slowing this down. Okay, let's move on. And then as mentioned, a recurring theme is like, I have a big research team. So I try to hire outstanding people and like let them run with guidance and oversight. But really, I expect a lot of them. And I tell them up front, like, I'm not this laid back, do whatever you want kind of guy. No. Here's what I expect from you. Here are the timelines. You're going to grow a bunch. I'm going to teach you a bunch. I'm going to learn a lot from you. But here are the expectations, and some people thrive in that. And other people are like, nah, I don't want to be a part of this guy's team, which I can appreciate.
Mike, there is so much there. I'm just going to summarize a few key points, but it sounds like you are really intentional with how you use your time and how you structure your day, such that when you are working, it is guns blazing. You are uber focused. But then to the point that beyond 5 p.m., you're really not doing that much work related. Weekends, it sounds like you're not doing anything work related. But that's incredible. I also love that you are coupling meetings with something that you like to do, like walk. And that actually takes me to a personal anecdote. I ditched my hospital parking spot because I was never getting anything kind of near the ground level. I was fighting traffic, and I'm now parking about a 5 to 6 minute walk away at one of our clinics. And I do this amazing power walk to the hospital. And I can tell you, as somebody who day to day is so sedentary at work, I try to also stand when I can. But that morning walk, that afternoon walk before and after work just amps me up, and it gets my energy set to where it needs to be. So I love everything you said there.
And there's one other thing I wanted to mention too, and I'm curious how you handle this. Like, I think early on with, with email, my approach was like, respond right away. And then somebody was like, hey, Mike, that's not sustainable. So I was talking to this guy. We were at a conference, and he said, last month, he just lost access to his email completely for 10 days. He just couldn't access his work email, and he was anxious. And then by the end of the 10 days, when he then got access to his email, he had missed nothing urgent. People that came to him with issues, then sorted the issues out like on their own kind of thing. And I thought, oh man, that's a powerful anecdote there. So we'll see how well this works. I'm going to try to also just like carve out a certain period of time to check emails once a day.
I love that.
And then not check them the rest of the day if I can. But I am curious, like how do you handle that?
Oh my goodness. It's such a good question. Mike, I will be the first to say that I am not very good at navigating emails. I found that I would often avoid checking them, then my inbox would pile up, and then when I logged in, there would be a bit of a panic of having to clear all these messages, and in that panic, having to decipher what's important, what's not important. So a couple of things. I read a book called Deep Work by Cal Newport. This book will really resonate with you. I think you've already nailed some of the concepts. Maybe you've read it, but it's in my top 3 books in the last 2 years. And I'm going to be talking more about this in one of my upcoming episodes. But he has a segment of that book dedicated to managing email. He says that you should really, if you can, with the job you have, try to check maybe once or twice a day. Allocate time in your day to check it so that it's intentional. And he says that when you are going deep on a project and you need to basically apply all your mental bandwidth to that project, he at that time will put a filter on his email. It'll be an automatic response saying, hey, I'm going deep on something, I'm going to get back to you within 48 to 72 hours. The truth is, there are not many emergencies out there. And if something is truly emergent, people are probably going to reach out to you by phone.
Yeah.
The other thing that he does is for certain content creators, he recommends putting in an email filter, which automatic reply. Somebody sends you a message, your reply is, thank you for the inquiry. And because of the high number of requests, I will only be able to respond to inquiries that match my schedule and interests. I did that for a while because I was getting a lot of inquiries on podcast episodes, and I was finding maybe 1 in 10 to be really kind of worth my time. But I found that maybe for me, it's too early to really adopt that kind of filter. But these are just some strategies. And then the other thing I have done after reading a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen is I have started to install these alphabetized folders in my email account with subfolders just to keep things really, really organized. Because I find the challenge for me is I have this massive inbox and then I'm like, oh wait, a month ago, someone sent me something useful. Now I got to search it. Now I got to find it. But if I have a capture system with all these folders and subfolders, then hopefully that will allow me to access information that I need in a more time efficient way.
Gotcha.
Those are the ways that I'm starting to navigate it. But email is a challenge for me still. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah. And it's like when you're doing email, generally like you're doing somebody else's work, right? Like they're asking you to do something. Like it isn't you actually getting your stuff done. And I don't know, there's so many use cases for AI that are being hyped. I would love if there was an AI use case that could make email like much more manageable.
There is one service I think called Superhuman. I haven't used it, but I've heard decent things about it. And the other thing that Cal Newport says in his book is, let's say you're having a conversation by email, and this is something worthwhile that you want to engage in. When you send your response out to this individual, give them the days you're available, the times you're available, leave the best way to contact you so that all the information they have is there. And then there's less back and forth. Mm-hmm. So you're having to spend less time going through a higher number of emails, but the emails that you are sending out are of higher quality. And then you're making the sender do more work in that case, which is fair.
Yeah. No, I like that. And it actually reminds me, I pay for Calendly. I don't have an administrative assistant. Sometimes I wish I did. But I find Calendly is quite good because then you can respond and be like, yeah, cool. Like just grab a 20-minute slot in my Calendly. Like maybe not if that's like my boss, but if it's like a student who's reaching out or like a colleague, I don't know, then I do find Calendly helps to remove some of that back and forth friction.
Absolutely. I think it's a great system. Mike, last question on your book is any information you want to share for any other aspiring authors out there who may be listening? Like what do you wish you knew about the book writing process that you now know that you may want to share?
Yeah, I think because I think so many people who listen to your podcast, they're interested in finances and finances for physicians in particular. If your goal is like, I want to spend my time and make some more money, do not write a book for the love of God. For the love of God, okay? Like that is a total fool's errand. Unless your name is Michael Lewis, I just don't think. I know with certainty you are not going to make money doing this. And it's like it's an investment of time, but also an investment of money. And I think big picture, if people are like, no, I really want to write a book, I would say like, are you sure? Like, are you sure you want to do this? But if you're really, really sure, the sort of fork in the road is you can either self-publish it via Amazon, which is what I did, or find a publisher. I would say find a publisher. I spoke to a few people, Yatin, actually, who had written medical books and kind of got their advice, and it was a very instructive process. But the short version is that it's incredibly hard to find a publisher. You're handing over your content to them, and they might totally muck up the layout, the format, the whatever. The royalties that you're getting off of a book with a publisher is like maybe 5%, maybe 10%. So it's really lousy, and it's delusional to think that a publisher is going to go out there and like market your book and make a bunch of noise and a good way to promote it. No. They're going to be promoting their winners, their book from Michael Lewis, from whomever else. So if you contrast that with self-publishing, You write the book and then you can put it up on Amazon. The royalties depend on the store. But Amazon Canada, it's around 30%, 40% royalties, which is much better than 5%. But, like this book, I think right now retails for like $12. So, never is it going to be a money maker. So if your listeners are thinking like, how can I make more money? Writing a book is not the answer. And then the two final things I'll mention is that if you want to write a book, we made the mistake, I would say, ours is in this sort of landscape version because that's just how the one-pagers, that's how they lended themselves to the book. So that was custom, and anything custom on Amazon is a nightmare. Amazon has atrocious customer support, despite the fact they're a billion-dollar company. They don't make their billions by being terrific customer sales reps, right? So I think if you want to write the book, then pause. Just find out the standard formatting. And then if you have the standard formatting for your book, it is relatively easy to go from my book is written to I want to get it out there on Amazon. But of course, then you have to do the work and effort to try to, market it, promote it. Do whatever you want to do to get the word out there because it's incredibly competitive and you're competing against TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, etc.
So in addition to the book, this year you also started your course. This was the inaugural year, a review of internal medicine. Maybe just tell us about your course and tell us how did it go?
Yeah, so it was, you're right, sort of, I think I had to find the one pager we put together for it. But yeah, it was sort of updates in inpatient medicine in 2024, everything you need to know. And so the content of it, we had a section on top 5 trials that changed practice in 19 minutes, crash course in reading CT thorax by yours truly, of course. And that was great, Yatin, to have you
thanks, man.
For that part of the course. Michelle Scholzberg gave an outstanding crash course on the real deal on coag testing. So it was virtual. It was 2.5 hours. I think we had maybe 60 signups in total, which was great. Same thing, proceeds were going to support Epilepsy Toronto. So, we sort of collectively raised over $1,000, which was really exciting. To answer your question, like, why did I do it? I don't know in retrospect now why I did it. Like, it was fun to do. Like, I enjoyed doing it. It was a lot of work, even though it was virtual. Even though Zoom is relatively good, it was a lot of work. And I think a mistake I made, we had 6 sessions and I had given 4 of the sessions. That was too much. So I do hope and plan to do it again in 2025, but I think I would try to do less. And I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. Like, obviously, large language models and now agent-based models are kind of like all the rage. I still think that people are going to want content that's been curated by humans and still have humans give a talk on, hey, let me break down these topics to you. But I might end up eating my words. And I don't know, maybe there'll just be bots that do this in the next few years. But so that's a bit of the information surrounding the course.
Yeah, you're raising a really important point. And believe me, I think about this too, because I'm also in the education space. Then I think about ways of delivering information. And will there be one day, where this information is delivered automatically by a system, by a computer? But I find, Mike, when it comes to medicine, which is what your course is based on, and I've had some similar thoughts too, I find that medicine, when we start off learning about it, we think that things are going to be textbook. And then you have so many patient experiences over the years where you realize, and I remember things from my clerkship and my residency that, okay, this deviated from the norm. And we were able to solve it through experience from everybody involved. And so I think that medicine I find it so often not that textbook. Like, I see things on my call shifts where I have to put my experience to use. And I think that's where you want to learn from an expert who's been doing this for a certain amount of time. So my belief, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I do think that there will be an ongoing need for delivery by a human being who has experience in that subject. That's my take on it. But I don't know if you agree, disagree, but...
No, I mean, I think you're right for sure. And we'll find out in the next few years. And I also kind of think that maybe the next time around that this course is run, it will hopefully be way less work and maybe just a bit of incremental additional work. I think the other, reflecting a little bit deeper, I also really enjoy teaching. I know you love to teach as well.
Yeah, I do.
So it's fun. Like it's something I really enjoy doing. And I have a good sense of what my weaknesses are, absolutely. But I also have a good sense of like, what are my strengths? And one of the strengths is like, communicating complex topics clearly and concisely. So I think that's probably what pulled me towards putting this on. And I think this is a conversation for another day, but it clearly can be a very large money maker. Like when I think of the internal medicine Royal College review course that's run each year, I think it costs like $1,000 per person to sign up and like 400 people to 1,000 plus sign up. So I'm not good at mental math, but like 1,000 times 1,000 is a lot of money. So what is the math? Yeah, it's $1 million. Jeez. So, and I think that's why like, Harvard does their Harvard review courses and Mac does their review courses as well. This clearly not a money-making venture, but it does make me think and reflect on some of these other much bigger courses, much larger courses, which for some people have clearly become, a very significant source of revenue.
Mike, I think there's a lot of valid points there. At the end of the day, I'm a big believer in using your knowledge and expertise to drive value. And I do think that's what you're doing. So the course you did this year, it was a start. I think it was really well done. One question I wanted to ask you, there are a lot of review courses out there.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we think about that and we want to start a course, we can say, well, there's so much out there. How am I going to separate myself and drive value? How did you overcome that thought process? Because I have thought about this. I have stumbled, I have stopped, and then I push on again and it's back and forth. How do you overcome this?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I don't think I thought that hard about it seriously. Like if my initial goal was like, I'm going to create something unique or different or better than other ones, no, I like, that's really hard because there's so many out there. I think instead it was just like, I feel like this would be a value add. Let's run with it and see what happens. And I've also, some of the earlier career faculty, I've also I picked their brains about it. I'm like, hey, like, would this be a good idea? And enough people are like, yeah, sounds good. And I also sort of asked them, what about these topics? And they're like, no, that sounds not so fun. So some of that quick feedback, I think, goes a really long way just to sort of test out the ideas and the thoughts. And I think also, like, from your podcast, you have such a large following that if you wanted to put together a course and do it, you would have the major luxury of just a really attentive audience that would be like, wicked, cool. Like, let's do this. Let's sign up for it. The other thing I did learn from the book process, as I thought about, how do you promote the book? How do you get it out there? I'm on Twitter, which is, kind of like a dying bird or a dumpster fire, whichever phrase you want to use. A dead bird.
I don't use
maybe.
Twitter, but yeah.
There you go. Yeah. But what's nice about Amazon Yachten is that, like, you can put out a tweet and then see in your Amazon sales, oh, that did nothing. There were no sales the next 3 days or 4 days. And then one of my mentees is like, oh, you should reach out to some medfluencers and see if they will review your book or like do a post on Instagram. So I was like, oh, cool, let's do this. Reached out to a couple of them. They do a story on Instagram and then you see, 5 books sold the next kind of day. So that was just sort of fun to be like, okay, like that's not rocket science, but if you want to really capture the audience, which for me is a younger generation, then you have to be going about it in creative ways to get the word out.
Absolutely. Mike, with everything that you have going on, what are your main goals for 2025?
Main goals are to do less. Honestly, those are my main goals, man. I want to try to spend a bit more time like growing what I've built. So my hope, fingers crossed, is that by the end of 2025, there will be almost no new projects that I've started, and instead trying to grow projects that my team has been working on and building. I also, when I look at AI and large language models, I then ask myself, like, geez, is it really a good idea to be writing up case reports or even doing like observational studies? And I'm trying to convince myself the answer is no. So I want to just be much more purposeful and focusing on specific buckets. So, to give you one example, we have this one model that's now live at a couple hospitals. And what this model does is it predicts how many patients are going to need acute dialysis within the next 7 days. It sends out a forecast. And why that's important is because acute dialysis, that's very resource intensive. It's labor, it's financially intensive. And most hospitals staff their dialysis nurses in a static fashion. Every day we got 5 nurses, right?
Okay.
But the demands are dynamic. So this came after I gave a crash course on machine learning to a group of nephrologists. And afterwards they said, hey, like, here's this problem we have. We spend so much money on this problem and there's a total mismatch. Could we build a model? So we spent the next sort of 6 to 9 months building the model. And the basic answer is that, this is predictable. This is definitely predictable. So now it's been live for a couple months now. And what's really exciting is that the nurse manager is able to schedule in a smart way. So like,
really?
Yeah, when it's forecasting that tomorrow, there's only going to be 10 new acute dialysis, you need much less nurses than in 4 days from now when it's 20 acute dialysis. So, that's an example of something that I want to try to grow that a bit more rather than starting other new stuff. But I think you and I will have to go for a beer or a pop at the end of 2025, and I'll let you know how well I stuck to that.
Mike, I know that the details of what you just shared probably beyond the scope of this interview, but if people wanted to learn more about that, like, where can they go?
Yeah, so the lab website is fraliklab.com, and then we have a page that's just dedicated to some of the machine learning models that we've built. So over the past 5 some odd years, we've built a half dozen models. Many of them have been deployed, evaluated, still running today. That has a bigger laundry list of other types of AI solutions that we're working on.
No, I'll put that website in the comments because it's probably going to spark some interest and some curiosity. Mike, I had been asking everybody this question and then it kind of fell off the radar, but I want to ask you, what is the most valuable lesson you've learned?
I've been thinking about this in anticipation. I think I don't know who said it. I wish I could quote them, but it's something like hard work beats skill 99 times out of 100.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I love that.
I really, really believe that. I think it's like showing up on time and working really hard. That goes such a long way. The other thing I want to mention is that in addition to being very lucky with such a large research team, I've had incredible mentors. So again, whole other probably conversation, but many of the projects I've mentioned to you, especially the machine learning ones, those have been made possible because mentors have been like, that sounds cool. I got some resources. Let's see if we can make that work.
I love it, Mike. Any closing thoughts that you want to leave people with as we wrap things up?
Well, I think we talked it a couple times about the importance of family, and man, does that come to life when you're a parent. So I think the other real kind of benefit of trying to sandwich all of my work in the working day is that it makes sure that like my evenings and my weekends and like in a couple hours, I'll go pick up my daughter Haley from daycare. I just feel like that is probably what we should be using to drive our decision making and to drive what's really important to us. It took me a long time to learn that and a couple failed relationships, but eventually I figured it out, Yatin. And I just think, my God, there's nothing more important than family. So you using that to try to motivate how hard we work and the things we do feels like a pretty good message to end off on.
I love that. I think the prospect of spending quality time with the people you love most, I think that's a huge motivator in life. I use it, and I'm really happy you finished off on that. Mike, it's been so much fun to talk to you, man.
Yeah,
we have to connect for that beer early in 2025. I know you say you're going to do less, but I think your mission here is good. I know you're always going to be coming up with ideas, and I look forward to just hearing what you're up to and learning from you, and can't wait to connect again.
That sounds great, Yatin. I don't know about you, but I decided on a dry January, so it'll have to be February or onward.
All right. Let's do it. February, I will be reaching out to you. Okay, all maybe we'll do like a walk and talk. I've been telling people. Actually, I played tennis with a friend, and we did like tennis followed by like a healthy breakfast. So maybe we'll do a walk and talk or something. But Mike, great to see you.
You too.
Enjoy quality time with the family, and just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing great stuff out there.
You as well. Take care, Yatin.
Take care. Thank you as always for joining me. If you are finding value in Beyond MD, I would be so grateful if you can continue to share the podcast with people in your network. We have a lot of exciting episodes coming up. I am really, really excited to bring them to you. Until next time, stay well, stay savvy.